Hi everyone, my name is Anuj Jindal and I welcome you to my channel. Philosophical essays in UPSC exam have become a very major problem for a lot of students. Students keep thinking about how to improve in philosophical essays, how to make sure that they're not losing marks in essay, which forms a very important aspect of your mains exam. But even despite giving a lot of attention to philosophical essays, we are often left confused as to how to actually structure, how to organize a preparation for philosophical essays so that we can ace it no matter what kind of essay we get in the exam. Today's video is an effort in this direction. I will try and explain to you what forms the core of a philosophical essay. How do you make sure that no matter what kind of ethical or philosophical essay comes in front of you, you're able to deal with it with confidence, not only with fear, but also with confidence. And you don't have a fear or an apprehension towards philosophical essays anymore. To understand that, we need to first try and gather information about how to structure a philosophical essay, what steps do we take, and then through an example, I will prove that these steps work. You can also practice after this session, and that practice will help you use these steps in your preparation as well. First of all, I want to talk about the mistakes that are made in philosophical essays by aspirants every year. And the fact that all the 8 essays that you get in UPSC now are more or less going to be from philosophical or ethical type of essays. It's very important to understand what are we doing wrong. The first thing is we often tend to deviate from the topic that is given because instead of focusing on what the topic is asking, we try to jump to the conclusions as to what do we need to write or what should we be writing. We try to jump to the conclusion too fast, and in that race, we often tend to misunderstand the topic that is being given in front of us. That results in deviation from the topic. Instead of talking about what is being asked, we start talking about some random things which are not connected with what is being asked. So the first mistake that a lot of students make, and it is very normal, very much expected that you will deviate from the topic. So the first mistake that you cannot or should not be making is to train yourself that you never deviate from the topic. Because an average essay which is talking on point, which is discussing what is being asked, is better than a very high quality essay which is deviated from the topic, right? The second mistake that students make is they do not connect intangible with tangible. We will try and understand it through an example in the below essay as well. But what this means very briefly is that philosophical essays have terms and words like responsibility, uprightness, justice, etc. etc. These are all intangible terms and words which often are very difficult to explain in words or express through our writing. It is very important, therefore, to turn these intangible terms into tangible terms, and that can be made possible only through real examples that should be relevant and good. So, you have to again train yourself to give very good, high quality, real examples as briefly as possible, which are on point and explaining or proving your argument correctly. So training of converting intangible to tangible, that is a mistake that students make. They don't connect these two. And it's a very easy job, not a very difficult one. The third mistake that students make, which is connected to the first one to some extent, is writing what you know rather than writing what is asked. There will be questions in the exam, both in answer writing, optional, as well as in essay, and it increases the more abstract the question is. We tend to write what we know instead of writing what we asked because we have a tendency of expressing ourselves and whatever we know about it. Instead of first trying to identify what is it that the examiner is asking through this question, what is the core demand of the question, that should be the first point of contact of you with the topic in an essay. So make sure that you slowly and steadily try to remove all these mistakes that you also know you will be making or you are making right now when preparing and practicing answer writing and essay writing. Essay writing specifically related to philosophical essays. Now that we've understood the mistakes, let's try and understand what to do. क्या करना है उसकी भी बात कर लेते हैं. The first thing that you need to do is to think and write rather than writing and thinking. This is again a very important aspect. You have to train your mind to think first, plan your essay first, create a rough structure first. I will be explaining to you how to create the rough structure, and then you start writing rather than writing and then thinking. Because when you start writing immediately or within 5 minutes, you will realize after a while that you have missed out on a lot of points that you already knew. So your knowledge could not be optimized because you made this mistake of writing and thinking and not thinking and writing. So what you need to do is think and write. Think, plan, and then execute. Train yourself properly again and again and again over the next 2-3 months so that you get into the habit of thinking and then writing. The second thing that you have to do is as soon as you see a topic, try and judge, try and understand the tone of the topic. टॉपिक की टोन को पकड़िए, वो बहुत ज़्यादा इंपॉर्टेंट है. Normally, philosophical essays are more positive in nature. They are rarely negative in nature. So, your tone of the answer of the essay should also be more positive in nature. If the tone of the topic is negative, then you have to see whether you want to write in a negative tone altogether or not, and then decide and execute. It's very important to identify the tone of the topic at the outset. This is what you have to do. The third thing that you have to do is relevance of the topic today. When you make the standard operating procedure that I will be talking about shortly, it's very important to inculcate in every point relevance of the topic today. The examples that you give should be trying to answer relevance of the topic today. If no example is doing that, talk about it separately. These are the points that should be in your mind always whenever you are getting into essay writing, so that you're able to make sure that you're not leaving out anything from these, so that you're not making any of these mistakes and you're not leaving out any of these points. Make sure, third point, that you understand and you're writing down the relevance of the topic today. Number 4, treat philosophical topics as a statement, not as a question. Now this is very, very important. The mistake that we make often is we treat philosophical essays also as questions and try and show both the sides in a philosophical essay as well, but that is not to be done, because normally, I'm not saying always, but normally, most of the times, philosophical essays will be given to you as a statement, and you have to try and support the statement through arguments, through examples, through reasonings, etc., etc. But trying to go around the topic and trying to discuss the other side of the coin might be too dangerous in a philosophical essay, because explaining and proving both the sides of the coin in a philosophical argument takes a lot of effort, a lot of time, and is often very difficult to express. Make sure that you treat philosophical essays in majority of the instances, not everywhere, but majority of the instances, as a statement and not as a question. Okay. Fifth point, why, how, and present context. These are the three main questions that you have to try and answer in the body of the essay that you will be writing. Why, how, present context. They might be merged together, they might be discussed differently. It's completely okay. We will understand how I have also answered all these three questions in the below essay that I will be picking up very shortly. So why, how, present context. ये तीनों आपके दिमाग में होने चाहिए. These are the things that you have to do. Let's now come to the SOP, standard operating procedure. Now, standard operating procedure exists for answer writing as well as for essay writing. But we often tend to keep focus on studies so much that we forget to train ourselves in the SOP. We forget to tell ourselves that there can be a more efficient way of writing the same thing. There can be a more efficient way of writing 20 questions answers in 3 hours, of writing 2 essays in 3 hours. That is where SOP or standard operating procedure comes in. Okay, let's try and understand it briefly, then we'll go through the steps. You all know that there is an introduction, there is a body, and there is a conclusion in an essay. In the introduction, how to simplify how you write and make sure that you get good marks as well. You focus on definition of the keywords and you focus on relevance of the core of the essay or the keywords of the essay in the introduction. The number one mistake that a lot of students make when writing the introduction is they tend to get into history. Even when the question is not asking about it, they are so inspired by historical context and they want to show off their knowledge so much that they tend to get into historical context of that topic. And that is where they mess it up because they tend to deviate from the topic. The number one thing that I said, the mistake, do not deviate from the topic. When you get into the history or historical perspective, there is a very high chance that you broaden the topic so much that you start deviating from the topic at hand. So how to make sure not to do it is to not get into historical perspective at all. If the question is such that it demands a historical perspective, only then you get into it. But in majority of the situations, don't make the mistake or don't do what majority of the students or all the students are doing. Everybody is so fancied about historical perspective that they start with it only. In civil services exam, essay. You don't do it. Do something else. Keep it simple. Define the keywords, number one, and talk about the relevance of the keywords, number two. These are the two things that you should be doing in the introduction. It makes your introduction very simple to write, very straightforward and simple to understand for the examiner, and automatically you know that you're never going to get less marks. You might get 120, 130 out of the allotted marks for for essay writing, but you will never get less marks. Maximum marks that are garnered by students is 150 to 160. So first of all, you make sure that you are there in 130, 140, and then you try to target 150, 160 by making some changes. We will talk about those changes slowly and steadily, but right now let's try and create a standard operating procedure. Okay. The second is body. In the body, you try and create dimensions as many as possible. Why and how plus present context. These will help you create the right and most relevant body in your essay. You have to make sure this is where maximum deviation happens because you've already created the background of deviation by giving a historical perspective. Now you get deviate more from the essay. How? By writing about things that are not relevant, not being asked. How do you make sure that you stick with what is being asked? By answering three questions: why, how, present, context. It's as simple as that. I will prove it very shortly, and this entire thing I've written in front of you that you can see has been written in a matter of just 30 minutes. So I was able to create an SOP. I was able to explain mistakes as well as things to do, and also identify a topic and brainstorm on that topic within a matter of 30 minutes. Why I was able to do that? Only because I had a SOP in mind. Okay. Conclusion has to be futuristic through interlinking. We will also understand how interlinking works, and it is so easy to actually implement in the examination. Do not summarize, especially in a philosophical essay. Do not summarize because summarization is not possible in a philosophical essay. Whatever you have expressed in 1000 words, how can you just summarize it in another 100 words? That is not possible. In more tangible essays, it is still possible, but it is not recommended. We will try and learn how to be futuristic in your conclusion by interlinking with other subjects. And it's going to be very interesting and very easy. Now, let's have a look at the SOP. We have understood what is to be done in the introduction, body, and conclusion. There are four simple steps. Number one, identify the keywords, mark the keywords. Okay, and define them in your mind or on paper. You can do both. Step 2, answer why and how in your mind as well as on paper in a draft so that you've already decided about the body of the essay. Step number 3, identify facts, examples, and government schemes that you can think of or connect with the topic that has been put in front of you. In philosophical essays, facts and government schemes are not considered very relevant, but examples play a very big role in deciding whether your essay is to be considered good or bad. So the quality of your examples will also matter a lot because that is how you can convince the reader that what you're writing is the right argument. Okay. And step 4, you move to conclusion, which has to be futuristic, done through interlinking. The entire statement is important. Futuristic through interlinking. And we'll prove it very shortly, very easily. Let's now come to the essay. This is the essay topic that I had decided that I'll be discussing with you. The topic says the price of greatness is responsibility. I have identified and marked the keywords already: price, greatness, responsibility. Very easy to identify the keywords. Okay. Number one step that you have to remember, it's not a question, it's a statement. So you need not prove that the price of greatness is not responsibility. नहीं करना है उसमें, नहीं जाना है आपको. You just need to prove that yes, it's a statement, which means the price of greatness is responsibility. You define greatness, you define responsibility in your mind or on paper through words. You can do it in your draft as well. You also can, to bring more clarity to your own writing, try and define what is not greatness. So success is not greatness. This brings more clarity and depth to your understanding about greatness, because we often tend to put these synonymously. If you're successful, you're considered great, but it is not so. So what is not greatness? Let's try and explore on that as well. Spend about 2-3 minutes on that. I've already done it for you. Money is not greatness. Your brand or your brand's brand is not greatness. So if people are able to identify with a brand like Woodland, it doesn't mean that it's great. Okay, it's just successful. It's just doing well commercially. Following, if you as an individual have a following or your brand has a following, right now, let's say Sadhguru Saab has a lot of following, that doesn't automatically make him great. He might be, he might not be. There are other parameters to judge that. But following certainly doesn't mean that you are great, because following can change overnight. Therefore, now I have brought in more depth to my essay by being more clear within myself what is greatness and what is not greatness, what is responsibility and what is not responsibility. That's the job that you take forward. And number 4, before actually writing the essay, you decide why and how responsibility is the price of greatness. And it is also, we take it forward further by mentioning that it is also a precondition of greatness. Responsibility is not just a price, because price is a negative word. So we tend to feel that this is something that you have to do to be great. This is something that you have to go through to be great. But it is not probably so. Responsibility is also a precondition for greatness. This is something that you need to be. This is something that you will automatically be once you want to be great. Once you've decided of achieving greatness, automatically you will have to, and you would want to have responsibility on your shoulders. So it is also a precondition and not just a price of greatness. And then we explain this by clarifying why and how responsibility is a precondition or the price of greatness. Let's go through the body part now. Let's try and see what all points have I generated. Number 1, responsibility is the foundation. Without a sense of responsibility, there can be no greatness. So, responsibility is the foundation on which greatness, the building of greatness, can be created. If there is no foundation of responsibility, automatically greatness will not come. And the best example here is of Greta Thunberg. She never decided or thought that I will be great, and in order to be great, I need to be talking about climate change. She was just, she had a sense of responsibility, still has a sense of responsibility towards climate, towards our environment. That sense of responsibility automatically converted into greatness without her having to give a thought to it. So she decided that she has a responsibility towards environment and she wants to fulfill that responsibility, which automatically resulted in greatness. Number one. Secondly, a sense of purpose brings responsibility, and which then results in greatness. If you have a sense of purpose in life, automatically you will find responsibility, and this sense of purpose plus responsibility automatically will combine together and bring greatness. The example here that I've taken is of Kailash Satyarthi. As I said, in philosophical essays, your examples matter a lot. The more relevant your examples are, the better, the more deep your argument tends to be. Okay. Kailash Satyarthi, he identified that it is his purpose on this earth to remove child labor, to reduce and then remove ultimately child labor, to try and make as much efforts as possible on reducing child labor. So he had a sense of responsibility towards the children, which was an outcome of his purpose towards children and towards removing child labor. And that responsibility automatically resulted in Nobel Peace Prize for greatness in this field. So responsibility is an outcome of a sense of purpose, and greatness is an outcome of a sense of responsibility, which is created through a sense of purpose. So this is the second argument that I've created. The third one is how responsibility results in greatness. Responsibility of being upright and just. That is what brings greatness to a person. If a person is not responsible towards him being upright and him being just, he might be successful, but he will not be great. The example that I've taken here is of Lal Bahadur Shastri. He resigned as railways minister after a very severe accident when he was the railways minister. Now, he had a responsibility towards himself of being upright, of being just, and he resigned, and that resignation was a kind of justice given towards the victims. Whoever had lost life or had suffered in the accident, that was a justice that Lal Bahadur Shastri gave himself, saying that I am the one responsible for ultimately responsible. I am the railways minister. I have to make sure that I am upright and just, even though the result might harm me, might affect me negatively. And that uprightness and justice transformed his persona from just being a politician to being a great politician or a great leader. Okay. So that is the third argument that I've created. Responsibility towards what's right versus what's might. This is what differentiates between great people and not so great people. For example, यहाँ पे I think मिट गया है Muhammad Ali. So he was a boxer, the greatest boxer of all time considered. He felt that he has a responsibility towards people of another country when our own people or our own government is wrong. So he had a responsibility towards what's right instead of responsibility towards his own nation, United States, which was the might. So although United States at that time was the might and it was waging a war against Vietnam, he felt that it's not right that his people are fighting against people of another country when those people are being peaceful. And that is the responsibility he felt. He took on that responsibility and decided not to go and fight in the war. He had to go to jail. He had to pay a very heavy price for this. He could not fight for a long time being a professional boxer, but he did not give up because he felt that he has a responsibility towards what is right at this point of time. And that is what transformed him from just being the biggest and the best boxer in the world to being the greatest boxer in the world. Okay. The fifth argument, responsibility towards your job versus interests on the job. Now, in all these arguments, please understand what am I creating? I'm transforming intangible towards tangible. I'm transforming intangible arguments, that is, towards your job, towards what's right and what's might, towards purpose. I'm transforming all these big words into tangible arguments by picking up the right examples, relevant, right, and forceful examples. That is what is going to define the depth and the weight of your essay. Okay, especially philosophical essays. Responsibility towards your job, not interests on the job. There will be a lot of interest around you whenever you decide to work on something, and all those interests will be at times contradicting with what the job actually needs to do. Okay, your responsibility is towards the job and not towards satisfying those interests on the job. The example that I've taken here is of Mr. E. Sridharan, who is considered as the Metro Man of India. because when he created Delhi Metro, there were a lot of interest in Delhi, interest of influential people who wanted the metro to be created in a certain direction, to pass from certain areas, because they could make profits by doing that. For example, if metro could pass from the posh areas of South Delhi, automatically the those areas, the real estate rates would increase, would spike. But if it was not in the interest of metro as an organization, as an institution, as a project, E. Sridharan decided that I am going to only look at interest of the job, which is to create a successful metro web in Delhi, and not interest of a lot of influential people. So make sure that if you want yourself to be considered great, then you have to make sure that your responsibility is towards the job and not towards interests, various contradicting and conflicting interests on the job. And this is the example which proves that. So this is how, by giving 5 arguments, I have explained how responsibility is the price of greatness. I have concluded here. Conclusion में क्या था? Futuristic through interlinking. Now, how do we interlink? Res- what I have done, because I have an expertise and I tend to think everything from economy side, so I could connect it with economy instantly, and I felt that in the 19th century, 20th century, USA has been considered as the greatest nation. Why? Because it focused on freedom and liberty. By showing responsibility towards freedom and liberty over everything else, by creating a pure capitalist nation where everybody had the right to do whatever he or she wanted to do, that responsibility transformed USA from being called as the biggest or the most powerful nation to being called the greatest country in the world. Now, the responsibility towards Earth will determine the future of nations as great or not great. So, a nation in the 21st century will be termed as great or not so great, not based upon responsibility towards freedom or liberty, but based upon responsibility towards Earth. That is the futuristic vision that I have shown by interlinking responsibility and greatness with economy and with nation's identity. Okay. So this was all about this session where I wanted to discuss how to write philosophical essays. Please answer and leave your comments below and tell me what are the pros and cons of this kind of methodology. What do you think about it? And would you like to follow certain approach, this approach or not? If yes, please also demand from me that I create more such videos so that I am pressurized and I am incentivized to create more such videos, picking up more such essay topics for you so that it brings more clarity to your essay writing technique. I'll see you very soon again. Till then, all the best. Take care. Bye bye. Jai Hind.